Hello, and welcome to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your host, Miracle Jones, and we made it. We are at our final episode of our Black August takeover, where we're learning to study, fight, train, and fast. And here we are talking about tonight how people are fighting back against mass incarceration. It's so important that we have real conversations about what does it mean to be impacted by mass incarceration, and what are some of the solutions that people who've been impacted themselves have come up to solve violence, displacement, housing burdens, and everything of that nature, especially right now where we know there are executive orders intended to keep people incarcerated, right? And so we think that during Black August, it is so important that we have the opportunity to talk to people, to be in conversation, to be in community, and to really have real world solutions about how we're able to show up for people who've been impacted. Tonight, we have three amazing dynamic speakers who are not only impacted themselves, but are running organizations intended to help people fight back, to have housing, to be in rooms of power, and to have second chances. So thank you so much for joining us for this Black August takeover. And now we're going to turn it over to our first guest. Some of you have seen him before on the 100 Power programming. Leigh Owens is a friend to the show, but is also the executive director of the PENNfranchise project. With that, welcome to the show, Leigh.
Thank you so much, Miracle. It's great to see you as always. Great to be here, and thank you for covering these important topics. It's really, really important.
We really appreciate you for coming and talking with us a little bit. Just for those who are not familiar, what is the PENNfranchise project, and what some of the work that you all do?
Yeah, so the PENNfranchise project is a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit that focuses on civic engagement with the currently and formerly incarcerated population. And we do a lot of that through electoral engagement, through civic engagement training. The idea, the goal with the PENNfranchise project is really birthed out of my personal narrative, which is that I was incarcerated over 25 years ago, did some time on Rikers Island. And because when I came home, back then you had to report that you had been incarcerated on job applications before the Ban the Box campaign. And, obviously as a convicted felon, right, there are a lot of handicaps that come with that, particularly in the early 2000s when I came home. So PENNfranchise really is about not just electoral engagement, not just civic engagement, but the hope is that people that we introduce to the electorate, people that we show how important it is, that will go through our civic engagement training, will hopefully be able to, start careers in the advocacy space, right? Campaign jobs, legislative jobs. So it's not just about voting for the PENNfranchise project. We're in the business of really finding talented, currently and formerly incarcerated people and training them on how to essentially do what I do in a way that, doesn't have to take the 20 years it took me to get to this point. So that's really the goal, is to build power in our communities through electoral engagement, but with the understanding that in order to get a population, a disenfranchised population that I'm also a part of, bought into the electoral process, you have to give something back. And what we give back is we give back another window, I like to call it, which is another opportunity to do something that maybe you never thought you could do. And so when we introduce people to our civic engagement training, it really is an eye opener, and it shows folks that you don't, as a formerly incarcerated person, you don't just have to be a trash collector, or some sort of job that doesn't have the dignity that you still deserve despite being formerly incarcerated. So I'll stop there. But that's essentially what we do. It touches on a lot of different things, obviously democracy, criminal justice reform, but also employment training and some other things as well.
Thank you so much for that. And just from your engagement and crisscrossing across the Commonwealth, can you just talk a little bit about how many people do you estimate are impacted by criminal, injustice system in Pennsylvania? And what are some of the stories that have stuck with you the most?
Yeah. So currently in Pennsylvania, we have 64 or 65, I want to say, county facilities in Pennsylvania. We have 66 counties, but 2 of the counties don't have county jails. So out of those 64, there are roughly on any given day between 25 and 30,000 people incarcerated in county jails. Then you add the folks incarcerated at state facilities, and you get about 62,000 people incarcerated on any given day. And that's counting the state facilities and the county facilities as well. So it's really about 25 to 30,000 in the county, 25 to 30,000 in the state as well, which is strange. And then you have about 200,000 people, Miracle, on parole or probation in Pennsylvania, right? So that's not necessarily incarceration, but that is a form of incarceration that also, in many situations will lead to an actual physical incarceration behind bars. So we count, parole and probation as someone that's impacted by the criminal justice system. And our work, stretches out to those individuals as well. As far as stories go, I'll give you a quick good one and I'll give you a quick terrible one. So the terrible one is a gentleman that I was having a conversation actually about today, that is incarcerated in a state facility. I want to say SCI Huntington, but don't quote me on that. And if anybody's interested, you can email me and I'll give you the real facility at some point. But this man has been incarcerated for quite a few years. He went in mostly healthy, but since he's been incarcerated, he's garnered ailments, right? And these ailments have caused him to not be able to write, to speak, or to walk. So he's lost literally 3 out of his 5 senses. So he can't do any of those things. He's at the mercy of, other residents. I don't like to use the word inmates, but other folks, other incarcerated folks, to help him get around the facility, to help him get, his mail, his food, to help him throughout, his stint, right? And I think he has at least 15, 20 more years, right? But this is a man that is no danger to society, right? And whatever he did, which I know for a fact wasn't a violent crime. He didn't hurt anyone. But this is a person that isn't a danger to anyone. He can't harm anyone. And so there was a medical release bill that was passed a couple years ago that would allow an individual to come home for a medical purpose if you're sick unto death, though. So you have to be on your deathbed essentially to qualify for that. And one of the stipulations of the law is that you have to sign a contract saying that you won't seek medical attention. For example, if you had cancer and you were, going to die and they let you home for medical release, compassionate release, you had to sign a contract saying, I'm not going to seek chemotherapy once I come home. Right. And so this gentleman doesn't qualify because he's not at that death point yet, but he should be able to come home because, he can't even leave the house. So essentially he's asking to be released to a medical facility, a retirement community, or, a hospice or whatever. But he wouldn't qualify under the current law. So there is another bill in place that would expand that criteria and make it so more people can take advantage of the medical parole, the compassionate release. So that's a really, really terrible story. A good story is that I've worked with more than one gentleman, but one in particular comes to mind who did over 20 years. went through our training, and he works on campaigns every cycle. He runs a field program almost every cycle in Philadelphia, and he gets hired by candidates. And he's doing his thing, right? And because he went through our training, I'm really proud to lift his story up, because he has a new career that he never thought would be possible, right? And so, that's the kind of thing we want to replicate throughout Pennsylvania, hopefully one day throughout the entire United States. And I know work is being done in other states, but I think that it's really important that we collaborate on some level to end felony disenfranchisement on a national level, particularly in the context of the current political and social climate. So I'll leave it there, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that really segues into our next question. You talked about that felony disenfranchisement. Can you talk a little bit about, even though we have banned the box, how people are still disenfranchised because they've either been arrested and their mugshot has been put on the news media, even if they haven't been convicted, or if they're just like coming home and they have to deal with people's perceptions. Can you just talk a little bit about how disenfranchisement still exists in Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. Disenfranchisement of formerly incarcerated folks, and it would take me a whole show, Miracle, to talk about the disenfranchisement of individuals that are currently incarcerated. So I'll stick with the formerly incarcerated folks that have come home. But there are so many ways in which you're disenfranchised. Obviously, you don't have to check the box, but there are still organizations, companies that before they make a decision of whether or not they're going to hire you, they will look into your background to see if you've ever, had any sort of, arrest or conviction. And many companies still won't hire you because of that, right? And so while we don't have to put it on a job application, during those background checks, if you've been incarcerated and it comes up, then and sometimes that really will still, a lot of times actually, it will still disqualify you from a lot of jobs, right? And so as a convicted felon, right, the reality is that you are limited in what you can do in a lot of ways, right? And there are a lot of us that have overcome that through education, through legislation. But I would say that's one way. Another way is, people's perceptions, right? And, one of the things I always say is that, obviously, first of all, I believe everybody deserves a second chance, right? Not everyone feels that way, but I believe everybody deserves at least a second chance, But when you talk about people's perceptions of an individual that is formerly incarcerated, most people look at that, would have a view or a picture of a person in mind, and it's really not an accurate perception of what a formerly incarcerated person is or looks like on a basic level. Right. And so the stigma behind incarceration, I think, is a big one. And it's something that Black and brown men, obviously mass incarceration disproportionately affects Black and brown people, men and women. But when you look at, just mass incarceration as a whole, anybody that has had a relationship with the criminal justice system, there's going to be a stigma associated with that. So for me, I spent years not wanting to talk about it. There were years where I didn't want anyone to know that I was formerly incarcerated, that I had been arrested and had to serve time on Rikers Island. It wasn't until I started working in electoral politics that I got confident enough to talk about it. And it became part of my story. It became part of my personal narrative. And what I learned through that was that there were a lot of people that had been, incarcerated or arrested that didn't want to talk about it either. And what I saw was that there was this big community of folks that had a relationship with the criminal justice system that didn't want anyone to know. But I think slowly, my God, Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, works like that, really went a long way in, I would say, changing people's perception and allowing us the opportunity to really talk about mass incarceration, to say, yes, I'm formerly incarcerated and now I do this kind of work, right? And so the stigma is a big one. And so I think part of the work, right, is to create as many stories as we can, as many success stories as we can, to shift that narrative. Because when you shift the narrative, then you have the opportunity for legislators, for elected officials to champion more of these issues. They can't do it as much as we want to do now, or they won't do it as much as we want them to now, because the narrative around mass incarceration and around the criminal justice system is still the way it's always been. So if a elected official wants to take a stand on an unfairness for that population, then they stand a chance of taking a political hit because of the stigma, because of the narrative around an individual that's been incarcerated. But when you change the narrative, and I hope I'm making sense here, if you change the narrative, then you can have more legislative champions that change these issues at the legislative level, the community level, and get us to where we need to be, not just formerly incarcerated people, but you'll find that when you service this population and at the legislative level, then you're also looking at education. You're looking at other issues that affect the larger population of individuals that are disenfranchised. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there are so many examples of disenfranchisement: voting, obviously, employment, training services. I believe, depending on your conviction, it will disqualify you from certain financial aid opportunities. And so, yeah, when the idea and the purpose of mass incarceration is not just to incarcerate people, but it's so that incarceration, that felony conviction, will continue to follow you throughout your life. And so we work at the legislative level and all the levels, right, to make sure that not only are we trying to, again, get people to vote, that we're working to lobby against the systemic issues that lead to mass incarceration and lead to recidivism.
Thank you so much for that breakdown, talking about perceptions. You mentioned voting, electoral engagement a lot of times. People forget that in Pennsylvania, you're able to vote if you are someone who, as Terry Meyer Spencer likes to say, a person from a colorful background. Can you just talk a little bit, if you can, just a couple, moments about what the law is in Pennsylvania and why it's so important for people to register to vote?
Absolutely. And shout out to Terry Meyer Spencer. That's the homie, doing some great work. So yeah, in Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of misinformation around this, if you have a felony conviction and you've served your time for that felony conviction and you're now home, right, you can vote. Now, if you're still incarcerated, usually in a county facility serving time for a felony conviction, then you're not able to vote. You're disqualified from the voting process until you come home. Now, if you're serving time in a county facility for a misdemeanor or awaiting trial, then you are also eligible to vote. And because of no excuse absentee ballots, the legislative measure that we got back in, I want to say 2020, you can now vote by mail. And so you can apply for a mail-in ballot while you're incarcerated, have it sent to your last known address. Or if you believe that you'll be home on election day, then you can register to vote while you're at the county facility, and you can just show up to your polling location on election day. If you're on parole and probation and you're home, you can vote. I had people calling me last year that their parole officers were telling them that they could not vote because they had felony convictions, which is not true. If you're home, you can vote. I don't care if you have 25 felony convictions. If you're home, you can vote. Right. And so, again, you can't vote if you're serving time for a felony conviction at the state level. But there's also a strong coalition of organizers and activists and advocates throughout the country that are working to fight against felony disenfranchisement for folks that are incarcerated. Now, other states, even after you've served time for that felony and you come home, some states you can't vote, even though you've come home with that felony conviction. I believe Georgia is one of those states where you never lose, you never gain the right back. So Pennsylvania in that way, I would say, is a little bit more progressive. But there was a time where you couldn't vote here either if you had served time for a felony conviction or if you had been convicted of a felony. But that changed a couple, maybe 20 years or so ago, which is good. But what you'll find is that every election you'll see a cohort of misinformation agents, passing out the tea that convicted felons can't vote, and that's just not true. So we have to do this every year, twice a year, more when we can, to let people know that you can vote regardless of whether or not you have a felony conviction, as long as you're home.
Thank you so much for that. And, as we wrap up this segment, can you just talk a little bit about why you think it's so important for people to vote? You talked a little bit about the electoral organizing that you were doing and the trainings that you do, but
Yeah.
particularly for people who are impacted, why is it so important that they vote?
Yeah, I think the main reason why it's important is because voting is the strongest way. And again, when I say voting, I like to say electoral engagement because it covers more than just walking into a polling location, right? But electoral engagement leads to better representation. And when you have better representation, when you have elected officials in office that understand our issues, that understand what leads to mass incarceration, that Black and brown people aren't inherently bad people. They aren't criminals, despite the popular narrative. The reality is that our neighborhoods are over policed. The reality is that our neighborhoods have been, they've been pulling the resources out of our neighborhoods for decades. Just so many reasons for that. And so when you elect the right leaders, that changes. Now, we haven't seen a lot of examples of that, and I'll let you decide why that is. But when you elect the right leaders, right? So I'll leave it there, and I'll just say that formerly incarcerated folks are a voting bloc that have been relatively untouched for decades, right? But when you convince this population that it's important, you also get their friends and their families too. So this is a whole population of disenfranchised, not just voters, but people who, when you look at our situation, it's not just the incarceration, it's the education, it's the resources in the community, it's the access to healthcare, even the access to good food in our neighborhoods, and in so many cases. And so really the only way to change that, yes, we organize, yes, we give out food, we do so many things to solve our own problems in our communities, right? But if we want to solve our issues on a systemic level, we have to do it through the electoral process by electing leaders that know who we are, that give us a seat at the table. And my goal is to create a generation of formerly incarcerated leaders that aren't just working on campaigns, that aren't just advocating for change, that aren't just lobbying, right? Because that's where we want to get them. But we also want them running for office too, because we want them, to represent us, right? And so in the meantime, while we get to that point, we need leaders in office that see us and hear us and understand us, that will take our meetings, that will have the courage to step up and say, yes, this person committed a crime. But when you go into these correctional facilities, they don't deserve to be treated the way we're treating them while they're incarcerated.
Thank you so much for that. Last question. You mentioned a couple pieces of legislation. Can you repeat those bills about like the voting for people who are inside? Yeah.
So last session, our voting in jail bill was HB 1756. I don't think that's been reintroduced yet, but there is a medical parole bill. The medical parole bill is from Rep. Briggs. Hold on, let me get you the bill number for that. Let's see. Oh, so that would be, I believe that's HB 413 or HB 443. That's HB 443, pardon me. So that measure, there are some other measures coming down the pipeline. One would make phone calls free for incarcerated folks because that is a financial burden, a financial hardship that's unnecessary. And actually, Representative Andre Carroll released that bill, HB 1506. And there's also going to be a bill, I believe, that Representative Emily Kincaid is exploring, that would make it so when you go through intake at a jail or prison that you aren't undiagnosed with your ailment. A lot of folks go into these facilities and they're on medication, and the facility is telling them, they're re-diagnosing them and telling them that they don't need that medicine, right? So they're not getting them. A lot of times it has to do with mental health ailments and medication. So they're not getting the medication that they need. So that's another example of a bill that's currently being crafted that we will support and we will advocate for as well. And there's so many more, but if folks are interested in hearing more about it, I'm happy to talk one-on-one. If people want to email me, it's Owens at prisonsociety.org or Leigh at PENNfranchiseproject.org.
Perfect. Well, Leigh, thank you so much for sitting down and talk with us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Miracle.
Of course, of course. And so that has been Leigh with the Penn Franchise Project, again, doing the work to make sure that people are engaged electorally, and through, civic engagement, the whole package, right? Because I understand people need to know what's on their ballot, who's on their ballot, how they're impacted, and how they have to show up each and every single election, as Brother Tim Stevens always likes to remind us, every 6 months in Pennsylvania, there is an election. And talking now to our next presenter, we talk a lot about what does it mean to be formerly incarcerated? What are some of the barriers? But there are a lot of people out here who are doing the work to knock down these barriers to make sure that people stay home and have a home to go to. And we want to bring on Ronna Davis-Moore, who's going to talk to us about the work that she is doing and how you can support her this Saturday. Welcome, Ronna. Okay.
Hi, Miracle. Thanks for having us. We
Thank
appreciate it.
I'm so excited. Can you just talk a little bit about your organization, Za'kiyah House, the work that you are doing,
Oh,
and just like how you created? I mean, this is we'll let our viewers know what you are literally history in the making, Black
thank you.
history, women's history, just like making history every day. And now you have one of the largest, right, impacted, led, run, organized reentry programs, I think in Pennsylvania, right? And maybe in the
Thank you.
country. So
Yeah.
this is a big, you're kind of a big deal, right?
You always tell me that. Thank you, but I'm humble, right? I'm humble.
But yeah,
So,
so can you just talk a little bit
thank you.
about your story, just for people who are not aware?
So, Za'kiyah House is a nonprofit that provides housing and support for men and women returning from incarceration. Our emphasis, of course, is recovery. We focus on healing, stability, and giving people a second chance. We offer supportive housing, life skills, workshops, job readiness, family reunification, and recovery groups. We serve people coming home from prison, people in recovery, and those who are at risk for homelessness.
And then what caused you to create this nonprofit?
What caused me to create this nonprofit? I am an impacted person. And like Leigh was talking about earlier, I just want to piggyback off of something he said that some people just don't like to talk about it, right? But I was probably one of the ones who just came out and say, hey, this is it. I was incarcerated. This is my history. This is my story. But I'm here to make a change, right? And so then Za'kiyah House was created to help people like me to go back and to bring them home and to show them that there is a better way of life. We can stay home. We don't have to use drugs. We don't, we can be housed. We can do all those things and be successful at it.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And can you talk a little bit about like some of the work you do and some of the people that you serve? You mentioned it, but I think also just going a little deeper into like some of the programs you offer, because you have been very instrumental in reducing recidivism here in Pennsylvania.
Thank you. We have two houses. We have one house that is called Donnell Safe Haven, which is named after my baby daughter. Let's just say that everything about Za'kiyah House is personal, right? Everything came out of my own pain and the things that I seen that needed to be changed for people who were incarcerated. I believed wholeheartedly that if you would give a person a chance and give them direction, they will show you who they are. So, of course, Za'kiyah House is our actual program, but we have umbrellas under Za'kiyah House, and Donnell Safe Haven is one of them, and that is for the Women's House. And so we have a 14-bed facility. for women who can come from any walks of life, incarceration, through rehabilitation, or off the streets through referral. We have another house, which is a men's house, and that house's name is Richard's Place. And Richard was named after my son, who was killed December 4th of 2017. We have a program called Come Heal With Me, which was the direct result of me losing my son. Because as you're healing, we think that it's okay to do it ourselves, right? We think that we can go into these little closets and get ourselves together, get our emotions all in order. But what I realized is that I needed other people like me. And so I created a group called Come Heal With Me, and other women and men came forward to heal together. Our new project is the Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is a church that was donated by an artist. We now have different events there. We are putting apartments upstairs, and that population of people will also benefit from having lower rent. It can be for impacted people. We just want to breathe life into the communities.
Thank you so much for that. You talk about breathing life, and you talked about how incarceration has like impacted you. You have this house specifically, Darnell's house specifically for women coming home. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the barriers that women specifically face here in Pennsylvania?
Of course. So when women come home, and how I know, right, is because I was a woman coming home, we lose everything. We lose our husbands. If we did have a boyfriend, we lost them also. We lose our children. We lose our houses. We lose our dignity. We lose our jobs. When we come home, there is not a lot of places for women to go. There's not a lot of programs out here that support women, especially incarcerated women, right? So we say that we have two folds. We support people who are incarcerated, but they have to be in recovery. So there's not a lot of places that can combine all those things. And so Za'kiyah House took on a challenge, right? Because we know that women need extra support because they can't come home and move with a girlfriend. Some men do that. They come home, they go back to their girlfriends, they go back to their wives, their families are still there. But when women are incarcerated, they may get one visit a year, if that. They may get one letter a year, if that. They may make one phone call and maybe they can't even get through. So women do not get more support than men in prison. So Darnell Safe Haven was definitely created to be that support for women who are coming home.
I talked a lot about like the work and your experience. You've been doing this for a few years now. Has there been anything that has like still surprised you about some of the barriers and challenges that people have faced as they come home?
So I've been doing this since 2016. We started a street outreach, and we opened up our first house in 2018. Some of the things that really still surprise me is some people just will not leave the past in the past. The stigma of being incarcerated, the stigma of being on drugs, the stigma of losing your children, that follows you forever. And we have spoke life into these programs, life into these women, life into these men. And so society needs to just give people a break, right? And give them another chance because you never know who will be that next hero. You really don't. And then sometimes people surprise me when they speak to me also because everyone don't know my story, right? So when they're talking to me, I'm listening, and I'm always listening for that, well, that incarceration piece, that recovery piece, those pieces, as Terry talks about, that colorful background that people do not like. So I wait for that, and then that's my chance to say, hey, I have those same backgrounds, and I turned out just fine after someone gave me a chance and gave me the support I needed.
Thank you. You talk about the support that you are giving people. You, like we said, working to reduce recidivism. outside of giving people a home, outside of, providing mental health services to help people heal, what are some of the ways that you're actively engaging in creating programs and opportunity for people as they come home?
So first, let me shout out my staff, right? Let me shout out Za'kiyah House's team, because without them, none of this would be possible. So what we do is we build self-esteem, right? We give them love. We give them the respect that they deserve back. And so we have several programs that's in-house. So we have like something called Wind Down Wednesdays, right? When you look at that on the internet, you'll see, oh, Wind Down Wednesday. So our Wind Down Wednesdays is we might be painting a picture, right? Or drawing or watching a movie, teaching them self-care. Like, you do need to take time for yourself after a long week of work. CYF in your business, parole asking you to come back and forth and drop a urine. You need to be able to sit back and relax and take that all in. We have something called Motivational Mondays. And Motivational Mondays, our ladies or our gentlemen might be journaling. They might be just talking inspirational, watching an inspirational movie, or just speaking to the staff. And it's just all these things that we do inside. We do have a workshop, and we have a workshop quarterly. And so we're going to say shout out to the community, because they come out for us every single time we call them. And we have places like Marikey, Three Rivers Youth, Foundation of Hope. All these folks come in and they give resources for free, right? Resources for the people at Za'kiyah House. So we really appreciate all the support that we get from the community, and then the inside support that they get from the staff.
And so you're doing like all of these programs. Can you talk a little bit about what the needs are? You have, these two housing programs that's literally housing people. You're still providing external programs and support. What are some of the needs that you still see in your day-to-day work?
So, Miracle, it's really, crazy that basic needs. That's it. Basic needs, right? So we need transportation. We need bus tickets. We need our bus that's sitting outside there. We need it fixed to be able to get our residents around. We take them to conventions because we want them to see what people look like in recovery, right? And that happens in those atmospheres. We need toilet paper, paper towels, soap, toothpaste. We need the daily living things that help us feel comfortable. Our women need tampons and pads, and we provide all those things, right? And so, we need the community to maybe just donate those things. It doesn't always have to be financial. We love in-kind donations. If you paint, come and tell me, hey, Ronna, I can paint. What room do you need painted? If you know how to put down flooring, whatever the community can give us, we would take it with no problem. We are very humble.
And you talk about community support. Can you talk a little bit about the gala that is happening
Yes.
this Saturday? How people can donate and support the amazing work that you're doing?
So the gala, this is our 5th annual banquet. And we have been doing this for 5 years to just raise some funds moving into Recovery Month. We started this 5 years ago because Recovery Month is in September. So we want to celebrate people in recovery too. We have people in our houses. Our staff are also impacted, some incarcerated, some who are clean. And so we want to be a part of it. So the gala supports all of those things. It supports bus passes. It supports basic needs. It supports whatever is needed. If you want to donate, you can go to zakiyahhouse.org, push donate, go right on that link. If you would like to attend the gala, it's this Saturday, October 30th from 2 to 6 at our brand new building. We changed our format of our banquet. So the first part of it is going to be networking. Come on in, support us. The tickets are $75. There will be someone at the door, and we would love to have you.
Thank you. I'm very excited for this gala. You talked about it's your, your fifth annual banquet.
You're our
5,
MC. I can't wait.
if you would have told yourself 5 years ago you would be in this position now, would you have believed it?
5 years ago, maybe. 10 years ago, no.
And you have been doing like so much like good work, really, making a change, making a rooted difference. What for you is the hope for like the next like 5 years?
The next 5 years, my hope is to get another house, right? I'm looking at some other things. Um, have the housing, the apartments all up and running, and to just solidify what I already have. Like have it work like a oiled machine. Um, teach what I know to other people because I won't be around. Right. I want it to go on and on and on and on. Right. I want there to always be somebody at Za'kiyah house that says, hey, everyone deserves a second chance. Let them in.
Well, everyone does deserve a second chance. And Ron, I'm so glad that you have taken your second chance and pulled so many
Oh
people
my God. Thank you.
along. And we look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
All right. Thank you so much. See you then.
Thank Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, talking about, pulling people along and making sure that folks have opportunities and are able to engage. Our next, panelist, had to reschedule, was going to be here for our lunch, but is here to wrap it up. You know him as Cousin Munch. I'm going to call him the same thing. We want to welcome Cousin Munch from, Reimagine Reentry Academy. It's coaching, it's giving people a second chances. Welcome to the program.
Doing? Hey, Miracle, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited. I know you've been really busy. You literally just got off work, so I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time out. It won't be too long. I know you're a busy man, got a lot of stuff to do. Can
I've
you
been
just
looking
talk a
forward to
little
this.
bit? Can you just talk a little bit about the academy and why it's so important that we give people opportunities to have second chances?
Well, Reentry Coaching Academy was founded in McKean, Pennsylvania, FCI McKean, Pennsylvania, by formerly incarcerated individuals. Judge Conti came in and gave a group of men an opportunity, presenting us with life coaching. And what happened was the compound started to change. The reason why it started to change is because everybody that she chose was a man of high I can't even say it. He was a high man of standard. He was a man of standard, and he was very respected on the compound. And what happened was he started using his influence to change everything around. Guys were starting to listen because they understood that everything that they wanted to go through or that they've been through, they had already done as well. Most of these guys were serving more than 10 years, including myself. I served 14 years. And the compound just started to change. We started reaching younger men because we started showing them that you can be you and live the life that you want to live by being you without doing things that just didn't make sense. So guys related to us, and it just was a beautiful thing. We got released, and then we started pushing because guys seen that the things that we were saying on the inside, we actually came home and executed. So it's been a beautiful journey. And if anybody would love to join us, please, we're looking for sound men and women. We partner with Coaching Beyond the Fences. That's our female partners out of Oklahoma City. And we're just trying to push this narrative all across the United States.
Talk about, pushing a narrative. Can you talk about some of just the services that and the coaching that you all provide to people, and what has been some of the programming that has resonated the most with folks?
We do workforce development. We do life coaching, goal setting, cognitive behavior intervention. What else do we have? We do counseling, mentorship. job readiness. So anything in that field that we know that people might struggle with, we help them with, because we all actually went through that. We all came home and we went through the process, because before you could coach anybody, you have to coach yourself. That's the first thing. So experiencing that, the pitfalls and the obstacles and the roadblocks that we came across, we now can give people the perfect insight on how to come home and make that transition by still being you through our life coaching.
And you talk about, some of those obstacles and barriers that people are facing, and that you yourself may have faced as you came home. Can you just talk about what some of the needs are that you see, and some of the unmet needs that you see for your fellow population?
Well, from the rip, if basic needs aren't being met, then it's impossible to thrive. So of course, basic needs, housing, clothing, food, shelter, all that stuff is very important, but also values. If a person's values and needs aren't being met as well, that's our inside needs, then they cannot thrive as well either. So if a person has a need to be loved, or a need to be accepted, or a need to be organized, or a need for order, if they don't understand these needs about themselves, then it's going to be very difficult for them to be successful as well. And that's where the life coaching comes in, because we ask these powerful questions and make you dig deep within. And then what we do is hold you accountable to the words that you say. So it's not like we're holding you accountable, like, oh, you messed up, so now you got to do this. No, you said it. So if it didn't work, what do we have to do to readjust to get you back on track? So we combine meeting basic needs and our values and our interpersonal needs as all in one, and use that to help them push forward.
And you talk about, you're being a coach, you are someone who served like 14 years, and you lived it. You lived it inside, and you lived it on the outside with like support in this community. What has it meant to you personally just to have like a second chance, and to have people, see you and trust you and believe in you?
My man used to tell me that your name is your brand, and your name will precede you. So don't do anything to tarnish that brand. And when I was younger, I took that personal, because I used it in the wrong way. I wanted my brand to mean something in the streets. And quite frankly, I'm not keeping it real. It landed me right in prison. So now I have a different mantra. My name is my brand. I want to be known to help people and help them create that paradigm shift. And since I've been home, that's what I've been doing. And guys have really been gravitating. And the reward is when I see that paradigm shift, when I see somebody who I know was in a rough background or were in the streets, and then they make that transition and they want to do better, not only for their family, but for them. It's a beautiful thing. Everybody around me that I grew up with personally, they now are thriving out here. They have great credit scores. Some are business owners. Some are thriving in their workforce. Some have trades. It's so being that influence has been great. And it's going to be rough at first, because people don't believe you. They believe what they used to see about you until you show them different. But once you know who you are, then you're solidified. It pushes forward, and that makes people believe in you, because they see you actually doing the work. Yes, it took some time. It was very hard, and I lost a lot of people on the way, but so many people that I gained through the process meant so more, because if you didn't believe me to be this new person that I am, then you really wasn't for me in the first place. Because why would you want me to continue to do bad? Why wouldn't you encourage me to push forward and live this productive life?
And so part of being, productive, sharing stuff on like social media, sharing your experiences. Why have you felt that it's been like so important just to be public about the fact that you were someone who's been incarcerated, and you're taking advantage of your second chance? Like, because we talked, well, some of our earlier guests talked about like that stigma. So sometimes people, try to be like, oh, I put my past in the past, but you've leaned into it. Why has that been so important to you?
Because perception is reality. What people see of you and perceive of you is the reality of how they act towards you. And the only way for people to see that there can be a change, if they see somebody doing it. It's easy to talk that talk, but what are you doing? I post my losses, I post my wins, I post everything because people have to see that. There's guys out there who want to get out the streets, who don't want to keep being incarcerated. They don't know how to get out, so they need that example, just like the guys were for me when I first got to McCain. I knew I wanted to change. I just didn't know how to go about the change. So when I seen brothers that I actually respected going through the process, it gave me a roadmap to follow so I could get out the streets as well.
And so part of this roadmap is you're engaging people. And in Pennsylvania, people are incarcerated, at state prisons. They're incarcerated at the local jails. They're also, in some respect, still incarcerated in these reentry centers because, some people are still sentenced to these reentry facilities and they're still, trying to serve off time. For these coaching, what does it mean to you to be able to reach people in all aspects of incarceration to say, hey, there are a group of us here, we're fighting for you, we believe in you, and we know you're capable of a second chance?
It's not even about that. It's more of seeing people. What it means to me is when they see with coaching, we give credit to the person because they put the work in. They set the goals. I'm just here to walk with you. So when I see people become successful, helping with their goals that they set, that's the reward in it. That's what gives me satisfaction, seeing that you was able to put down a plan on paper and execute it. It's not even on us. It's on the individual. I'm just here to ask the right questions to clear the lens.
And as you're asking, these questions for folks, you said you did 14 years on the inside. You came home. What are some of the things that you want people to know about the struggle of coming home and why it's so important that programs like yours exist for people?
What's most important that people in the streets need to understand is there's only so much wrong you can do. The more you think about it, every day I left the house, I left with felonies. I was doing everything in my power to go to prison. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. The more negative you do, eventually you go to zero. But when you do positive, it's endless. The more positive things you do, the more opportunities you will come across. And our program is most important. For one, we want to work with anybody that's willing to work with us. And two, we actually been through it. And we've seen how that change has been. We've seen the losses. The biggest thing that I seen was when I went to jail, all the babies. I came home, they were grown like that. So many people died. I lost so much. It just wasn't worth it. But now that I've been doing the right thing and staying on this path, so many doors have been opening up. And I just want that for everybody. You could still be you. You can go through what you go through and you can still be you. You don't have to be corny. You don't have to be a sellout. You can still be you by doing the right thing. And it's cool. It's cool. This life is cool. I love being a father. I love being out here helping people, and I love giving back. This is a cool life.
I think you said, perception is everything. And a lot of times people do struggle, but I think also being able to have a representative, like, okay, I am able to live a life. I'm able to take care of my family. And like you said, I don't have to commit felonies every day is really, really important. And there's a couple more questions before we let you go. One, how can people get in contact with y'all? How can they get in contact with the Reentry Coaching, Academy? And two, looking back on all of the work that you've done, as you said, coaching makes you look at yourself. What are some of the things that you're most proud of?
Being a father, that's the most thing I'm proud of. Also starting this Reentry Coaching Academy. Anybody want to reach out to us, reentrycoachingacademy.org. You can follow me on Facebook, Cousin Munch. I just love the transition that I made for me and everybody in my family. I love the fact that I was able to come home with a plan. I've been able to open up a store. That didn't pan out the way I wanted it to when I went to Atlanta, but I did it. And I learned so much in the process from doing that, partnering with my cousin and my partner, Sean. Also starting this Reentry Coaching Academy. This was an idea that 9 men had inside of the FCI facility and was able to come home and make it a reality. So understanding that power that You can really think something, tap into it, turn it into the plan, and execute it to the T. There's no greater power than that. That's the most beautiful thing in the world. One of our tools is visualizing, and that's what I like to teach guys. Visualize, see it. If you could see it, then you can achieve it, because you can make it a reality. Put it on paper and put that work in. It's the same energy we did put into doing wrong. If you put that into doing the right thing, it's going to be 10 times more powerful. That's a fact.
All right. Well, I always say it's always good to have a big cousin. And so, Cousin Munch, we want to thank you so much for sitting down with us. I know you just got off work, so thank you so much. Taking time away from your family. We really appreciate it. Please enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yep. And that has been, this Black August takeover of the Power Hour. If you were not aware, Black August refers to a month of study and concentration, where you study, where you fast, where you train, and you fight to do what you can, to fall in love with liberation and revolution, to end mass incarceration. It started in the 1970s, George L. Jackson, Bobby Jackson, and the Black Panthers just organizing. And so I hope over this past, 4 programs, these 4 news hours, you have been able to learn more information, meet new people, and find ways that you yourself can get involved in the fight against mass incarceration, in the fight to make sure people are housed, in the fight to make sure that people are not committing violence, in the fight to make sure that people are supported as they come home, and understanding that we're all impacted by these systems of mass incarceration. We talk a lot about, the caravan that's starting with Let's Get Free, starting on the 21st. Please make sure you're able to show up on Sunday the 21st, as we have that Power Up with Academy going from September 21st to 27th, kicking off right here in Pittsburgh. You want to make sure that you show up on Sunday, September 21st from 2 to 4 p.m. Make sure you show up this Saturday for the Za'kiyah House 5th annual banquet happening from 2 to 6 p.m. at their healing center. Please make sure you show up. It's very important that you engage, that you donate your time and your resources to build community, because it takes all of us to fight and to make sure that mass incarceration can end in our lifetimes. And before we go, I want to talk, and give space to give honor and support to the family of Brandon Flood. If you may not have watched one of our prior podcast of the former Secretary of Pardons, Brandon, he was able to join us, and he talked about how, as a formerly incarcerated person, why it was so important and impactful for him to advocate and to help people come home, to make sure that people were getting pardons and that people were able to get a second chance. He recently passed, this Black August, and so we just wanted to send our condolences to him. Over the past 24 to 48 hours, people on all sides of the political spectrum have been talking about how he was fighting for justice, how he was bringing people together. And so he was someone, right before he passed, was talking about how he was celebrating being able to have people come home, being able to help people get pardons. And so right up to the very end, he was dedicating his life to get people free. And so we did want to take a moment just to honor him and his legacy, and to give our deepest condolences to Brandon's family, and let them know that we are thinking about him during this Black August, and thinking about them during this difficult time. And again, thank you all so much for tuning in to the One Hood Power Hour. We believe in bringing you news that you can use with people who care. And we want to thank you so much for tuning in. Next month, we're keeping on with fighting, we're keeping on with training, and we're going to be talking about affordable housing all next September. We know that we are in the fight to pass inclusionary zoning, which helps people have access to housing, which reduces, recidivism, which reduces incarceration, making sure that people have shelter actually reduces violence. And so we're going to be talking about all next September, why it's so important that we have, fair, equitable housing policies, how we're able to keep Pittsburgh home for folks, but how all across the Commonwealth and the country, we can really push back against this housing crisis that we all seem to find ourselves in. So please make sure you tune in each and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. I am your host, Miracle Jones. Thank you so very much for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday.